Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ba'd. I am usually asked this question about assessing organizations with regard to their effectiveness. I was invited to assess two of the largest NGOs in the country, Muslim NGOs. I was several years ago, I was asked to assess the academic performance of a very large university in the Middle East. I'm not mentioning names and so on for purposes of confidentiality, but this is an area which I have some understanding of. So I thought, let me try to very quickly present before you a format that you can use to assess your own organization, especially if it is an NGO or if it is a non-profit. The reason I'm saying that is that commercial organizations' assessment is usually based in terms of profit. Bottom line is profit. Whether the assessment includes sales figures and so on and so forth, but bottom line is profit. So that's we are not going into whether this is a good way of assessing or not. I'm just saying that this is how commercial organizations are assessed in terms of their profitability, in terms of earnings per share, and so on. So that is I'm going to leave that out of it. What I have to say also applies to them, obviously, but I'm more concerned here with regard to NGOs and with regard to non-profit organizations, especially because most of them, if not all of them, do a lot of very good work, very good charitable work. They work with depressed parts of society, and they are basically founded by well-meaning people who would like to make a positive contribution in the world. So I think it's important to ensure that they get the best people and they get the best things that are required in order to succeed. So this framework of mine, I've tried to keep it as simple as possible. I say that for an organization or a movement, whether it's an NGO or non-profit or whatever, or a movement or a tanzim or a jamaat or whatever you think of that nature, there are four critical requirements. There are four absolutely critical requirements. If you have an organization that fulfills these four requirements, then you can be sure that you are on the right track. The first and foremost of them, or rather the fundamental of them, I would say, is that the leader, whoever he or she is, must exemplify the values that this movement or this organization seeks to espouse, the values that this movement organization talks about. So the leader must be seen as an embodiment of those values. There should be absolutely no lack of sync between the leader's words, the leader's actions, the leader's lifestyle choices, what the leader says and does, and the values that this leader espouses. If there is any fracture between these two things, if there is any gap, then that credibility will completely destroy the organization. So I think that is a very, very important thing to understand. Many times we find this happening where the leader's behavior is not in sync with what the organization, the values that the organization espouses. Some of the decisions of the leaders may be, again, out of sync with what the organization espouses. And then people try to make excuses and they say, well, after all, he's a human, she's a human, people make mistakes. Believe me, none of that cuts any ice with society. Whether you like it or not, we tend to hold leaders up to a higher standard than we hold ourselves. Whether that is fair or unfair, justified or unjustified, that is the reality. And anyone who seeks to lead any kind of movement like this any kind of aspirational movement, any kind of idealistic movement, any kind of value-based movement must understand this and must make sure that this gap in credibility never happens. If it happens, it's fatal. It's a one-time thing. In my experience, you never get a second chance. Once it's gone, it's gone. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. So the 4 things that are required, I've mentioned the fundamental, which is that the leader must exemplify the standard. The 4 things are, the first of them, quite obviously, is a clear vision of the final state. I'm going to look at each of these in a little bit of detail. So just now, this is more like a listing. So clear vision of the final state. That's the first one. Second one is the right people on board, which means also the wrong people off board. So right people on board. The third one is total commitment of all those people who are on board. Total commitment. And the fourth one is necessary resources. These are the 4 things. So very clearly, very quickly, clear vision of the final state, right people on board, total commitment of all concerned, and necessary resources. If these 4 things are available, if these 4 things you find in that movement, in that organization, then you can be sure that they are on the right track and they are likely to succeed. Let's take each of these in a little more detail. Now, what is the meaning of clear vision of the final state? Clear vision is clear vision, meaning that the final state, what is it that you want to achieve? This must be as clear to you as if you are looking at it face to face. The clear vision, the final state must be as if it has already been achieved. It must be there in front of your eyes. You must be able to touch it and feel it and taste it, and it must be in your heart, and it must bring tears to your eyes. I always say, if it can't make you cry, it can't make you work. It's as simple as that. So it must be something which is so close to the heart. It must be something that you dream about. It must be something that you wake up seeing that. It must keep you awake in the nights. It must make you cry before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in tahajjud and asking for the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to achieve that. It must be something that you feel privileged to be contributing to that. It's not something that you feel as if you are doing some ihsan to that thing, to say, well, I am spending so much time in this job, I am spending so much time after this particular... No. If you're feeling that, then it's better you get out of there, because you are not going to be doing any good to that particular movement or that particular project. You should feel that this is a great privilege that I have of being able to contribute, and you must always have this sense that I'm really not doing enough. So this is the kind of thing that I mean by clear vision. And finally, that particular project and that particular movement or that particular goal must be your legacy for your life to the world. It must be something that you say, if I drop dead, and 1,000 years down the road, if somebody remembers me, what is the first thing that comes into their mind? That thing must be that project. So if somebody, for example, for me, it is the SBA, it's the Standard Bearers Academy, which is, Allah knows how clear it is in my mind. And if somebody says, 100 years after you're dead, if somebody thinks of you, what must they think of? I would say they must think of the fact that I was so passionate about the Standard Bearers Academy. I think this is something that is very, very clear, very important as far as clear vision is concerned. Very important is that this is not only what the leader or one person or a few people need to be clear about. This is something that everyone associated with that movement must be clear about at the same level. Now, everyone, ideally speaking, it would be everyone and the cat, but definitely the core group of people who are at the heart of the movement, for them, there must be absolutely no lack of sync between what is in the heart of one and what's in the heart of the other. So this is what I mean by clarity of vision. The second one is to have the right people on board. If there is one thing that I cannot possibly overemphasize, it is this particular thing. right people on board also means the wrong people off board. As Jim Collins says in this book, which is Good to Great, he says the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. I think this is something which is so critically important. It's not possible to overemphasize that. Who are the right people? First and foremost, right people are people who are not followers. They are truly comrades and they are truly colleagues. Meaning that each one of them is a leader in his or her own right. The fact that there is a leader for the whole group is not because that leader is intrinsically, personally superior in any way. It's just that leader may be the one who conceptualized it, so therefore that person is a leader, or that person is someone who takes people along and who people love and they put him forward. But there should be no other reason why one person is a leader, meaning that any of the others could equally be a leader of that particular team. And this is very, very important. So they must be equals and they must be able to challenge the leader. Now, when I say challenge, I don't mean challenge his authority or challenge the leader for the position. I mean, there should be people who are experts where the leader must need to stretch in order to be equal to them and in order to have something worthwhile for them to think about. And the same thing applies to every single one of them. Whoever is in that core group must not be able to sit there feeling complacent to say that, these guys, I already know more than them. That's absolutely deadly. So that must not happen. Each of them must be a challenger for the other, because it's only when you are challenged that it draws out the best in you. Today, especially, we in Muslim organizations and Muslim movements are so used to living inside echo chambers that all we hear is our own voice echoing from the four walls. And the audiences that we face are all audiences of converts. So we are preaching to the choir. And we don't have anyone challenging us, no matter what nonsense we talk. Nobody challenges us. Nobody asks a question. Nobody tells us, look, I'm sorry, I don't accept this particular statement of yours. Where did you get it from? We never have that. Absolutely. We don't have this in our madaris. We do not have this in our Muslim organizations. And to me, this is an absolute death knell. It is a sign of a terminal illness, which is the terminal illness of complacence. It's a terminal illness of people, yes-manship developed to a point where everyone is only a yes man. And anyone who has anything critical to say, we have only one response to that, which is to cut off their head, you throw them out of the organization. And that's why we never get anywhere. So it's very important to have people who challenge you. Each person who is an office bearer, it is extremely important that they must be technically qualified at the highest level. This is another big problem that we have. We get people on the basis of what we think is their good intention. We, of course, have no means of going inside anybody's heart to see what the intention is, but we assume it's a good intention. Second thing is, we don't want to admit that, but it's on the basis of our personal like for that person. So it has to be somebody who thinks like me, who praises me, who is always there with me, who's doing my khidmat and so forth, all of which may be useful if you are hiring a valet, but they're useless as far as leadership is concerned. So my simple question I ask organizations sometimes to say is that when was the last time that you actually praised somebody and gave them an award for disagreeing with you, for going contrary to what you wanted them to do? When was the last time you did that? We don't even accept it. Forget about giving an award. So technical qualification at the highest level and a track record of experience. Please understand, experience is what you did. It is not what you talk about. It's not what you say, I am planning to do. That's not experience. That is your dream. That's your sales spiel. Experience is what you actually did. So, for example, if you are running a large NGO and you have a person who is head of human resources, then that person should be independently able to land a job as the head of human resources in another global NGO or in a global commercial corporation. That person should be able to land that job on their own. They must be able to get a salary offer which is on par with the market. Only then are they qualified to be the human resource person in your NGO, in your movement. If that is not the case, and you have got somebody there because of whatever reason, then believe me, you have the wrong person. So, highest technical qualification, I am giving you an example only of human resources. Same thing applies, whether it's a social scientist, whether it's a, whatever skills are needed in your NGO, educationists, you've got somebody as heading your education function. Will that person get an offer? For example, if you're running a school and you have somebody who's your principal or who is your school administrator, put your finger on the best school in the country, right? I'm not even going outside the country. Let's stay within the country. So, best school in the country, and say, can my principal get a job as the principal of that school? If the answer is yes, then that answer must be confirmed with an actual job offer. Let them float their CV in the market and see what job offers they are getting. If they can land a job as the principal or head of that number one school in the country, then they are the right person for you. If they cannot get that job, then you have got the wrong person in that seat. As simple as that. I'm giving you actual measurement metrics for these things. So, it's the qualification as well as a track record. And as I said, a track record is what you have done. It's not your sales spiel. It's not what you say, I would like to do this and this. It's what you have done. Finally, what I said right in the beginning is that you, the leader, as well as you, the core team members, must feel absolutely privileged to be able to contribute to this organization, to be able to contribute to this movement, and you must do it with a sense of pride. To say that my work is my signature, and I want to do my work in such a superior way that this work is the number one, absolutely best in class for my contribution, for my technical contribution as far as the organization is concerned. So, if you are writing a business plan, for example, for a project that you are doing, that business plan must be something which will stand up to an international audit. It must be something which, even though you may not be taking a bank loan, but that business plan must be something which you can take to a global bank, and the bankers there will fall all over themselves offering you money because that business plan is so good. I mean, that is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. If you are an organization that is into politics, then your think tank, your political scientists, your demographers, these people must be people who are names on a global platform. Then you are on the right track. If that is not happening, then believe me, that's the gap that you have to bridge to get to where you need to get. Third one is total commitment of all concerned. Total commitment has only one meaning in my mind. Total commitment means total commitment. It does not mean part-time. Believe me, read my lips, there is no movement in the world, Islamic or un-Islamic, that was achieved over a weekend. There is no movement that was ever achieved. There was nothing of repute, and there is nothing which stood out in the world which was ever achieved by people working part-time. Total means total. Total means your entire mind, your emotion, your energy, your time, your resource must be committed to that particular project only. What about family? Subservient to this. What about entertainment? Forget about it. What about your relaxation? Forget about it. Why? Not because you don't need entertainment, not because you don't need relaxation. The project must energize you to such an extent that your relaxation must be this. Please understand this. I do not believe in work-life balance. To me, work-life balance means that you are not really interested in the work. People who were completely dedicated, and I'll give you examples, I'll give you names, who were totally dedicated to something, they only did that. They did not do work-life balance. Right? Think about this. Take Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you say what was the work-life balance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what would you say? Take Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu. Say what was his work-life balance, what would you say? Right? We are talking about people who were skewed towards their goal, completely skewed towards their goal. I mean, everything else was subservient to the achievement of the goal. There's no question of, this is my off time and this is my weekend. And they worked and they loved their work and they enjoyed their work and it energized them and it kept them happy and it kept them contented. And they worked through all kinds of incredible hardships because that work was their life. And that is the meaning of total commitment. Part of total commitment is also trustworthiness, which means that there should be no need for somebody to remind you to complete anything. You should be in a mental frame of mind where if somebody reminds you, you must take this as the biggest possible insult to your integrity and to your professionalism that could have been done. You must say, well, you are reminding me. Do you think I need to be reminded? What kind of person do you think I am? That must be the framework of the person who is in that core team. People who need to be pushed, passengers and train carriages which need an engine to haul them are not fit to be in the core team of any worthwhile project. Sure, they can be around, they can be ancillaries, they can be employees. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are really involved in making your organization succeed. It has to be people who are there, who are hugely self-motivated. There's a fire in the belly. If their get up and go has got up and gone, you don't need them. Simple as that. So you need people who have that energy and who don't need reminders. For them, it's a matter of personal pride. It's a matter of self-respect that they must deliver to whatever they have committed, and they must commit to the maximum that they can commit. So this is very critically important. As I gave you examples from the Seerah, there are any number of examples from the Seerah, from the Sahaba. Take other examples outside the Seerah and Sahaba. Take examples from the business world, take examples from the world of academics, take examples from great nation builders. You will never find somebody who was doing that work on a part-time basis. You will never find somebody who was doing that work on a weekend. What you do on a part-time basis, what you do on weekends is your hobbies. It's not your life goal. Life goal means that your entire life is spent in that and nothing else. Last and by no means the least is the importance of having complete resources. If you need to leap across a 10-foot wide trench, you need to be able to leap 10.5 feet. Not even 10 feet. If the trench is 10 feet wide and if you leap 10 feet, the chances are that you will land on the edge of the trench and you will still fall inside. If you leave 9.5 feet, obviously you are inside the trench. You haven't cleared it. So if you have a 10-foot trench, you need to get across that. You need to be able to leap 10.5 feet. Sure, you can start with some seed capital. It is not necessary that you must have the entire fund that is required available at once before you start. That's not necessary. But the entire fund must be within sight. You must know where it's going to come from. Sure, you can get the money in tranches. You can get resources in tranches. You can hire people that you need over time, but they must be in your frame of reference. They must be visible to you from day one. If that is not happening, the project is very difficult to say that the project will succeed. Because the matter is very simple, which is that if you need some resources, then without those resources, you will not be able to succeed. You will still have your dream, but the dream will not be able to be realized because the resources are not there. And very, very important, the core team must have made a significant personal investment. the leader must make a significant personal investment. Again, this life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a beautiful example of that. Complete investment. Where did the resources of Khadijatul Kubra radiallahu anha go? Into the mission of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Where did the resources of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam go? Into his own mission. Where did the resources of his core team of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and Talha and Zubair and Sa'ad bin Mu'adh and Mu'adh bin Jabal and all of those people who were close to him, radiyallahu anhum ajma'in, where did their resources go? And by resources, I mean their money, I mean their time, I mean their energy, their focus, in many cases their lives, in the mission of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore, it is very critical that necessary resources must be there, and total commitment, I have mentioned that already, this must be without saying. Because in my view, in my life, I have seen two kinds of people in the world. There are people who win, and there are people who tell you why they could not win. That's the choice that you have to make. Do you want to be among those who win, or do you want to be among those who make excuses and tell the world why you could not win? Because believe me, those excuses are worthless. They're not even worth the hot air it takes to speak those words. Nobody cares a damn why you could not win. People are looking at, did you win or you did not win? As simple as that. Now, a very important thing to do for any organization is to have a benchmark. You can say, well, you are the pioneer in that area and there is no benchmark. Maybe it's true in some exceptional cases, but for the vast majority, I would say it is important to have a benchmark. Who is a benchmark? Whoever is the best in class, best in the world in that particular area. This is an absolutely critically important thing to do. Whether it's a benchmark in terms of personal development as you as a leader, or a benchmark for the organization, for the movement, it's very important to have a benchmark. Now, what is this benchmark? Why is it important? Because the benchmark inspires. It is the nature of the extraordinary goal to inspire extraordinary effort. And the benchmark is somebody or something or some organization or some movement or some effort which shows you that this can be done. So it's a marker of hope. It also shows you what kind of incredible effort other people made to get to where they got. And therefore, it's hugely inspiring to have a benchmark. The benchmark must be something that you have yourself experienced. So, for example, if you are running a school, I would say that you should have personally visited the great schools of the world. You should have spent time there. You should have ideally, you should have studied there. I mean, alhamdulillah, I went to one of the best. But I'm saying that not everyone may be able to, may not have studied in a great school. But you can certainly go and visit that school. You can try and get the atmosphere of that school into yourself. Go talk to the children, talk to the teachers, and so on and so forth. And try to understand that thing from inside to say, how does a great school run? What does a great school feel like? So then when you come back to your school, you will not spend your time in self-congratulation and in congratulating yourself for mediocre stuff. You will get hugely fired up to say, we are nowhere near where we need to be. This is what we need to do to upscale ourselves. So a benchmark is very, very important. And finally, this benchmark must become the persona of the people. You must see yourself as that, as somebody who is who's eventually who comes out from there and who exemplifies that mission that we have set out to achieve. So it's very important to pick the benchmark, to learn about that benchmark, to go and experience that benchmark, to believe totally that that is where you want to go, and then to have a strategic plan of how to reach there. Finally, the acid test. If you have understood this presentation, I would say now go back to your organization, go back to the project that you're working on and measure it against this template of mine and see where you stand. And then you say, what do you need to do to bridge the gap? Because if you are not where you need to be, then obviously there's a gap. There are three things that you need to do to bridge any gap. Number one is look at the people, which is who is there, who must remain there, who must be chucked out, and who must be brought in. So three things. You may have some people who you need, but they are not with you. So how do you recruit them? How do you get them? How do you inspire them to help you? Number two is you have some people who are good. They should remain there. And there are some people who, no matter how much you love them, no matter how much time they spend with you, these are people who are toxic. These are people who are dragging you down. These are people who should not be there, and they should be facilitated to find their fulfillment somewhere else. So this is very important to do. Who are the people who must come in and who must leave? Number 2, resources. What do you need and where do you need it from? Resources is not only money. Resources is money, it is people, it is knowledge, it is influence, and so on and so forth. So what are the total resources you need, and where are you going to get this from? That is the second gap. And the third one is in terms of commitment. What do you need to do to achieve your goal? What is the level of commitment of yourself and the people? And as I told you, if you have to convince people to work, they are the wrong people. As simple as that. If you have to give pep talks, if you have to convince people to work, if you have to remind people, if you have to push people, then get rid of those people. You do not need those people. At the end of the day, if you are the only man standing, that's how it is. Then go find the right people. Because otherwise, it is not going to work. As simple as that. And before you kick out anybody else, look at yourself and see whether you need to kick yourself out. Because many times I have seen in many organizations, it is the leadership, it is the topmost leadership, it is that one man or the one woman who is the fundamental problem. Now, telling them that they need to change others is nonsense. They need to change themselves. What must you do? Go home. Right? Go home. Go up, put yourself out to pasture. Either change yourself or buzz off, because you are the problem. You are not the solution, you are the problem. If that is the case, then stand in front of the mirror, look at yourself, have the courage to accept that, and either change that or get out. One of the two. Because otherwise, the organization will never succeed, that mission will never be accomplished, because the head itself is bad. So this is very important. That's the acid test. I always say you can only get what you pay for. So if you are going to put in the effort, then inshallah you will also get the result. Very happy to talk more about this and discuss with whoever is interested. Thank you for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.